Welcome to Recover, brought to you by Healthcare Alliance North America.
Yeah, if you had to get any type of smoothie, what's your go-to smoothie like mixture?
Generally I wanted to have some greens in it. Some greens and some prote.
Some greens and some prote. I like that. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Recover. I'm Harrison. I'm your host for today. I'm so excited that you're here with us, and I'm so excited to have my buddy James here with us. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. James Byous is, of course, as many of you know, has done videos for Oasis Recovery for a while, has some podcasts back there on our YouTube channel and Facebook. Definitely check those out. But he's also a very accomplished musician. He's in the middle of writing and producing a rock opera as we speak. So you got a lot going on, man. But I'm so glad you got the time to sit down with us here today. Like I said, you've got a bunch of videos in the backlog. People have seen you interview a lot of people, so I kind of wanted to turn the camera around and interview you today. So man, can you just tell me like a little bit about your recovery? Where did it start? What did that look like, and so on?
So I started drinking and using when I was 15 years old. I was in high school, and it was pretty evident pretty quickly that I didn't drink like the rest of people. And I think that the impetus to do hard drugs from an early age is probably an indication that you have the seeds of addiction in you, because it was very appealing to me from an early age to escape my feelings, and I think that that's the basis of what addiction is for a lot of young people. It's like, I don't want to feel my feelings. This makes it, this gives me an escape from reality in a really effective and immediate way. And, a lot of us that are in recovery have come to terms with the fact that we are escape artists and that we want instant gratification. I want instant change. Right. To the way I'm feeling. I want to escape my feelings immediately and get transported into another realm. And, I started, they say pot's a gateway drug. That was absolutely true for me. It's not true for everybody. But it was the gateway for me because when I did that, I was like, man, they told me that this was bad and feels pretty good,
right.
Yeah. Pretty.
I mean, these Doritos taste pretty good right now.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys said these were not good. Anyway, I was like, what else are they, keeping from us? And I was obsessed with like counterculture, and a lot of my heroes were, musicians from, the 60s and 70s and stuff. A lot of them sacrificed their mind for their creativity. Sure. And a lot of them imbibed, drugs and alcohol, and I looked up to them and I wanted to be like them, and it felt good for a long time, and of course it started to not feel good, and it became no longer necessarily an escape, but just a I'm getting a head change. I'm not escaping anything because there's this backlog of stuff that I've never dealt with. Right. It starts building up. You escape it for the time, but you put it on the shelf, and then sooner than you'd like to admit, you have this tsunami chasing you of all this stuff that you never dealt with, Right. And I was in and out of recovery rooms from the time I was 21. A friend of mine told me, I think that the way that you use and drink is a little different from other people. Sure. And maybe you should try this thing I've heard about. And I was like, are you talking about like 12-step recovery thing? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm 21 years old. Of course I'm drinking too much, But I went and, I went for a long time. I'd get like a couple months and I'd be like, this is fine for these people, but I'm not, I'm not an alcoholic or I'm not an addict, And I went through that cycle a bunch of times, and I thought that I was just realizing that this thing didn't work for me over and over again. And really what it was is a chronic relapser, unbeknownst to myself.
Truly, yeah.
And, I would use the times that I used, quote unquote, successfully as ammunition in my case against being and admitting that I had a problem,
Sure.
And that's pretty common, it's for whatever reason, it's the hardest thing in the world to admit that you have that problem. We're obsessed with continuing using. We will, trick ourselves into not seeing all of the problems and only remembering the good things that happen, which are becoming fewer and farther between. And it's getting harder to, keep these plates spinning. And you're just like doing this juggling act, lying to the people around you, lying to yourself. And eventually it came crumbling down. But it wasn't, it was years, unfortunately, after me turning 21, where I finally hit my rock bottom, which was, in some ways what people call a high bottom, because I didn't come in after losing everything. I still had 2 vehicles, and I didn't have DUIs, and I wasn't dealing with a court case. I had never spent any time in jail. But I was, frequently waking up really hungover, having a drink to deal with my hangover. And it brought me to my knees over and over and over again. And, I couldn't just take a break from drinking anymore and have that be a fix for me. It was like, no, if the break always leads back to me being in the fetal position, thinking about killing myself, then, I got to do something else, because this is not sustainable. It's not any way to live. And, I was so miserable and so spiritually defunct and devoid of joy and so frequently depressed, and my relationships were suffering, and, I couldn't hold down a decent job, and people weren't giving me the keys to their homes. They weren't handing me their babies, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
totally.
I was just really, really tired, very, very tired of spinning the plates. And when I finally hit my rock bottom, I was engaged. My fiance at the time, I had come home multiple days in a row and sworn to her, she's like, "You didn't come home last night. What, I'm like, what is going on? You need to stop." And I would be like, "You're right, I do." And I would mean it. I'm done. You know what? I'm going to stop doing it. And I would mean it. And like magic, I would be at the bar that night drinking, and I'd be like, "How did this happen? Didn't I say I wasn't going to?" And finally, after doing that for way too long, she was like, "I'm going to leave you," and I promised her I would never do it again. Boom, that night, back at the bar. And the next morning, she's standing over me, and she wasn't even mad anymore. She was just terrified and sad, and she was like, "James, you need help." And that morning I thought in a more realistic way than ever before that, the only way out for me was just to kill myself, because I was so ashamed and so guilt-ridden and so tired. And the little boy in me was like, I don't want to die. And for whatever reason, that was a really, really huge revelation to me, and that was when everything changed. And she and a good friend of mine took me to my first meeting, and I was shivering and I was puking, and I raised my hand and identified, "Hey, I'm James. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict." And I was crying so hard and sobbing, and the guy that shared that night said everything that I needed to hear. And I realized, not only do I have this thing, but it's going to be, I'm going to really, really go for it this time. I'm going to really, really throw in and do everything they tell me to do and go for it. I'm going to live this. And
yeah, what did that look? What did going for it look like? What did that mean?
It meant, when they said go to 90 meetings in 90 days, I went. It meant when they said, read this book and do these things, I did those things. I made the coffee, I swept the floor, I put out the chairs, I was in,
Yeah.
I
Not just showing up for the meeting, but helping and being a part of that community, like,
Yeah.
and getting involved and staying after and like seeing what's going on with the guys.
and listening to the things that came out of people who are further down the way than me, listening to the things that came out of their mouth with all of the desperation of someone who is drowning. If this is what you say is going to save my life and turn it around, then I'm all ears from now on. I'm not going to be like, yeah, maybe that works for that guy, but not for me. No, okay, I'll try it.
Right.
I'll try the hell out of it, you know, because if it means the difference between me dying and me living, then I'm going for it. I'm gonna do it this time, because I'd half-assed it so many times. You know, I'd gone to the meetings and just sat there with my arms crossed, and you know, I didn't make friends with anybody, which is a really big thing too. You know, make friends with the people, get their numbers, help the new guy when you have a little bit of time. You know, like really, I really went for it, and I haven't, you know, had the need to have a drink or a drug in coming up on 5 years. I haven't had any fucking hangovers in about 5 years. I have amazing friendships with people in recovery, and I've seen people, you know, and I've participated in their recovery, and I see them turn their lives around, and I see them, you know, doing well, and I have self-esteem today. I can look at myself in the mirror and not hate the thing I'm saying. You know, I love myself today, you know?
Yeah.
I have regrets. I live with regret. I have things that happen in life that really bum me out from time to time. Life still happens. I'm just living life on life's terms, and I'm doing it sober. Mm-hmm. And when something happens that overwhelms me with feelings, you know, scary feelings, I don't run away from it anymore. I just feel the feelings.
Right.
I feel them, and then once I've felt them, you know, they go away. That's what happens.
And I bet you learn something from it too, from the experience.
Big time.
Like I don't know who said this to me one time, but someone said something along the lines to me that was like, the best, like the times in my life where I feel like are the best, I often look back and they're some of the worst. But some of the worst times in my life, in the moment, I often look back and think that's where I grew the most. That's where I learned the most. I don't think that's true like all the time. Like we have like good times, and like they're fine to have good times. Yeah. But truly, like when you're using and you're escaping and you're running away from these emotions or these problems or these traumas, you're not solving them, and you're not getting anywhere. And often the high you get from solving that problem or feeling that emotionally whole is far greater than anything you could put in your arm. And that's so good. As if you could say anything to old James, 4 years ago James, like if you could reach back through time, would you say anything to him?
Yeah, I would say take some time and be single. Number one. Yeah. Number one, get sober, but take some time and stop getting into relationships to put a Band-Aid on your problems. Like spend the time alone, you know, work on yourself, and get ready. That's what I'd say.
So dude, we've talked a lot about, you know, your past in recovery, where you were, and that sort of transitional period, but what does that all lead to now? Like, what does that mean for James Byous in the current day? What has that led to, and what have you been able to accomplish and do with your sobriety?
I think the most important thing that I've been able to do is help other people. Mm-hmm. You know, I was really concerned before I got sober that the mechanism by which a person loves was broken inside of me. That my ability to love was somehow broken and not good. You know, that I wasn't a good person, that I wasn't capable of loving the way that a normal person can love. I thought I was like, there was something wrong with me. And it wasn't like I just stopped drinking and suddenly I was completely fixed, but it did get immediately a lot better. And I realized, you know, I have a big heart. I do want to help people. I do love, you know, my family and my friends, and I want better relationships with them. And that stuff takes work, you know, but, you know, you start doing that little bit of work, and you start, you know, repairing the relationships, which takes a while, you know, and then, you know, you start to have a life for yourself where you feel better about yourself. You have a little bit of self-esteem. You're doing esteemable things. And then, you know, people in recovery notice, especially the new folks, and they're like, I don't know what that guy has, but I want that, you know? And it's peace. It's a little bit of self-love and self-respect. But it really gets amplified when you get to help the other people, you know? And so, when COVID happened, I couldn't play music in LA because you couldn't do live shows. You know, we were on lockdown, and I had just experienced like a real slump, and I I got a call from a friend of mine that lives here, and we were just connecting. How's it going for you out there? Oh, it's going good. You know, we miss you. You know, you should think about moving to Asheville. And I was like, you know, I would really love that. I really would. But you know, well, I guess I don't have to stay here for music. You know, I can't play. And he's like, you could play here when things open up. We have a great music scene. So I came out here and I got this job with Oasis, you know, and I started here as a behavioral health technician. I was one of the techs. And so we would take the clients to and from housing to the recovery center where they would have their groups. And when we were at the housing together, I would stay there for like 3 nights out of the week, and I would sleep there in my own little room. And then, you know, I basically checked on the guys throughout the evening and kept them company throughout the day and made sure that they stayed on task. And then, you know, I'd bring them here for groups and stuff. But when I was there with them, you know, I was essentially a peer in recovery, you know, who's a little bit further down the hallway. And I would just be like, look, man, you know, I would get really attached to these guys, and I would really care about them, you know, and, you know, I would be rooting for them, and I'd be encouraging them, and I'd be, you know, trying to set an example for them. And that time was so healing for me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I can look back on, you know, all of these people that have been successful in their recovery, and I see them doing well, and I see them, you know, they have jobs, and they, you know, they're driving their car. They've been clean for a couple years. They, you know, the light is back in their eyes, and they just look healthy, and I see them killing it. And I go, man, I did something good. You know, it's tangible, you know, and I'm not saying I saved their life, but I contributed to their recovery. You know, I was there for them as a peer and as an example of someone, you know, that's a little further down the hallway, like I said, and just, you know, that's the most important thing that I've done in my recovery. You know, before I recovered, I was, I wanted to be a rock star and drive around in a sports car and live alone in a mansion and drink myself to death and be lauded as
dream.
Yeah. I wanted to be lauded. I would live in a bathrobe, drink vodka out of a bottle, and everyone would call me a genius and give me money, you know? Yeah. And that's so sad, man. What a sad, miserable existence that would have been. I'm so happy that didn't work out for me.
Right.
You know, I'm so happy that instead I ended up at Oasis helping people.
Truly.
You know? And I've since moved back to LA, and I still make music. And I come to town every once in a while to work for Oasis, and I still get, you know, so much joy from it. But I was telling these guys, you know, and these young ladies, like, you got to get out there and live your dream. You know, you didn't get sober to live a small life, and I was telling them to live their dream and realize that I wasn't living mine. You know,
right?
And I wrote this piece of theater that's about this guy who's in recovery. Well, he's an alcoholic. Yeah. It's about a guy who has a superpower, but only if he's drunk. And then throughout the course of the show, obviously that's going to cause some problems. But, you know, I'm using my experience in recovery and my love of creating art that to move people. And, you know, I'm living up with purpose. Yeah. You know,
dude, you're being so humble right now. And talking about your rock opera, your rock musical. Dude, tell us about Jimmy Darkness. Tell us about the show, because I know a lot about it, or you told me a lot about it at least. I haven't gotten the chance to see it, but I think that there's a lot of parallels between your story and Jimmy Darkness, obviously. So, like, tell us about the show and how that kind of played into your recovery.
So I actually started writing the show in my head when I was still drinking, but in my mind it was going to be this hilarious segment about this guy who has a superpower when he's drunk. And then as I got sober and started to kick that idea around again, I realized, you know, oh no, he's got to have a problem, right. You know, which is funny because it parallels my journey with addiction. It parallels my journey with the story. You know, when I was in addiction, I thought that it was funny, you know, right. And then when I got sober, I was like, it's dark, you know, sad. It's very sad and it's dark. And, but anyway, I started writing the show when I was here at Oasis. I would show it to the male clients, like the first couple songs and the first couple monologues from the show. And the concept of the show is there's this guy who has a superpower. When he's drunk, if he gets drunk, he knows Bruce Lee level kung fu. If he doesn't drink,
God level kung fu.
Yeah. If he doesn't drink, he doesn't have the power. And And at the beginning of the show, you're all in because you're seeing the world from his perspective. You know, you're sort of seeing what he imagines. And there's a comic book that plays behind the band during the songs, and then after the songs end, the character talks to the audience and says, you know, and he's dealing with something he doesn't know why everything's kind of falling apart, and you know, okay, I've tried going to AA, but it's just, you know, it's not for me. You know, it is the metaphorical retelling of my sobriety journey. Well, I started, you know, writing it here. I'm showing it to the clients. They were really into it. You know, they were like, this is incredible, man. Like I can see it. Like I would explain it to them. They go, I can see it in my head. I'm going to be there front row, James, when you finish this, you know? And, I took it back to LA, started showing it to other musicians and stuff. And my buddy Stain Malve, really great guitarist, came on to produce the record with me, and my other buddy in recovery, Ali, ended up doing the all of the engineering. So he engineered the record.
Very cool.
And me and Stain and Ali, we toiled and recorded, and we didn't get that quite right. We're gonna have to re-record this whole thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we really poured ourselves into it. And when I had some workable demos, I started showing those demos to people, and the demos got me in with a producer, this really talented young producer, Graham Wetterhahn in LA, who does a lot of experiential theater, a lot of immersive theater stuff. And he saw the vision, heard the demos, loved the record, was like, man, I let's do this. So we put it together. We got a cast. There were 3 other people in the cast that play the auxiliary characters that sort of interact with Jimmy. We got a director, also in recovery. You know, we had a choreographer. We had, you know, a band of 5, and me up there, you know, and we did it at a bar of all places. And you know, and I encourage other people, if they're not ruining their lives, go ahead and drink.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So, you know, they're enjoying their drinks and watching this show about this guy who has a really, really serious alcohol problem, you know. And at the end of the show, standing ovation, I'm in tears because it was very cathartic for me. Mm-hmm. And since then we've been progressing. We had somebody there who produces television and has produced some musicals that have done really well, you know, Broadway adjacent type stuff, and maybe even gone to Broadway. And he came on and said, I want to help you guys take it to the next level. So now we're putting it in this venue and in LA, and they're putting a really state-of-the-art sound system in there right now. So we're a little bit on a hiatus, but there's a huge LED screen, which is where the comic book will be played and stuff.
That's
so
cool.
It's happening, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's happening, and the record is being mixed right now. And the new mixes are sounding incredible. So
they really are.
It's happening. You know, it's happening. And you know, one of the things that I remind myself of is that none of it would be happening if I were drinking right now.
Exactly.
No, it wouldn't. There's just no way. I could not maintain relationships with all these people. I'm still a little bit of a brat from time to time. Sure. You know what I mean?
Aren't we all?
You know?
Yeah, especially in showbiz, you got to be a little bit.
And the other thing is, you know, like when you have like a really specific idea of the way something should go because you wrote it in your head, sometimes you're like, oh, sorry, it needs to be like this.
I really wanted you guys to be on 2 hands for that part. Is that okay?
Yeah. But you know, the show's is in some ways already a huge success. Even if we didn't do another round of shows, it was already this huge success. There were a lot of people that came to the show were, you know, in tears afterwards. You know, they were, and people that are not alcoholics were just like so moved by it. And that was always my goal, was, you know, like tell a story about addiction, but make it fucking rock. You know what I mean?
Totally, dude. It's just crazy what you've been able to accomplish, like since getting sober and such. But what has writing Jimmy Darkness, what is writing this rock opera, like, has that reaffirmed your sobriety at all? Has that like led to any like new revelations? Yeah, actually, there are parts of the show where, in order to kind of make Jimmy speak from a place of authenticity, I really had to kind of re-enter the headspace and like kind of go back in time in my mind and remember how I felt. And writing Jimmy from that place in my life, you know, basically really belligerent,
not wanting any help, angry and desperately wanting help, but having no idea how to ask for it, and really no way to allow myself to see that that's what the problem was. Re-inhabiting that space was really, really cathartic for me, and hard. It was hard to like, it was hard to go back there. But, I also, like I said, it's immortalized on film on the Netflix show that I was on. I'll watch it from time to time. And I give myself space. I don't watch that all the time. It's not super fun for me to travel down memory lane like that. But when I see it, it's really hard for me not to cry tears of compassion for this guy that I'm seeing that like hates himself. And totally. I'm like, dude, you're so good, man. Man, when you have all of that shame and guilt and remorse that comes with addiction, it's so heavy. It's just like this heaviness that you carry around with you. It's the weight of the world. And when I see that and I see the footage of that, it's really sad. It's painful, you know. But
but at the same time, I'm sure you want to like almost like talk to him in a way, like, hey, like, if you could just make this decision that you're gonna make in like 2 weeks, like you'll get there. That said, if to someone watching this right now who might be thinking about getting sober, would you have anything you want to say, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about getting sober, it's not gonna hurt you to do that. There's no possible way that you getting sober is gonna hurt you, unless you really need a medical detox, which is different. But like, I think we're talking about achieving sobriety, not about detoxing from drugs and alcohol. If you need to detox, go to detox. But if you're thinking about getting sober, there's a 0% chance, in fact, that it's gonna hurt you to do that. So I would say do it, number one. Number two, and I always say this, you're always afraid that your life is over because you don't know how to have fun or interact with the world anymore from a place of sobriety. Mm-hmm. And there will be some growing pains, but it will turn around, and you will learn to feel and appreciate life on a level that you never have before. The novelty, if you're an addict, the novelty of being sober is almost like a drug in and of itself. I like to say sometimes, sobriety is a hell of a drug, right. And the presence and your access to feelings and your ability to feel the world is so heightened when you're sober. I remember when I was a couple months sober and I had my windows down. I had, a song playing that I loved, and I felt this incredible presence that I hadn't felt since I was in high school. Like a feeling of being truly alive and being in the moment and being, spiritually correct. I hadn't felt that since like high school, and it's a hard feeling to describe, but high school is when I started using, and that was a really magical feeling, and it's a feeling that I have access to whenever I want to sit down and just take a breath and go, man, I'm alive, I'm sober, I'm here, I'm feeling it, Right.
Totally. You don't have to escape anymore. You don't have to run away because you're happy in your own skin.
Finally. Yeah, and life happens.
Right. It took some work. It wasn't like you just got sober and magically I'm happy.
Right.
Like you had to mend the relationships and figure out the problems that you were avoiding that whole time.
Yeah.
But once you do that work, which is arguably just as hard as like being addicted to something else, like you might as well just do the work that it's going to take.
Yeah.
Then you find that happiness and that peace, right?
Yeah. I'm really lucky that I think in some ways I'm a little bit ADHD. I get bored with things. I was really bored of being addicted.
Sure.
It
can be quite boring, right? You're oftentimes just in one room, like every day, doing your thing, whatever that is.
Yeah, going out and getting more of whatever it was you needed.
Right.
Doing it, being, hungover or dealing with a come down. Like it was boring.
Yeah, and often
You know?
that becomes like a problem in and of itself. Like it might start as like something that you can escape your inner problems, but once it becomes a habit and that sort of nature, like that is a new problem that
Right.
you're now faced with, and you haven't dealt with the other stuff.
Right.
It's a hole you dig yourself into really fast.
Yeah.
It would seem.
Yeah.
Well, man, I've been so glad to have you here today. I love talking to you. I could talk to you endlessly, but we've got to wrap this up at some point, right? For everybody out there, again, if you're thinking about getting sober, like James said, do it. If you need to detox, reach out to your local recovery center. Find a detox center. There is help available to you. If you need to talk to one of us, definitely give us a call. Shoot us a message. We would love to talk to you and see where you're at. But that's all we have for Recover today. James, again, thanks so much for being with us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Recover. Make sure to like and subscribe for more podcasts and videos on addiction and recovery. For more information about Healthcare Alliance North America, visit hcana.com.